Chapter 10. The ride back to Hoboken was filled with a palpable silence, broken only by short sentences of explanation. JC couldn't speak if she wanted to. She wasn't prone to histrionics, but Jesus Christ. Max's jaw clenched and unclenched. His hands remained tightly fastened to the steering wheel. When they pulled up beside their apartment building and Max came around to let her out, she pushed her way past him, running up the stairs and fumbling for her keys to open the door. JC didn't listen to Max call her name. She slammed the door and fell against it, heaving a sigh of relief. Fluffy. She remembered Fluffy and flew to her bedroom. The window was still open and his food bowl filled with the food Max had said he left for him. He would come back, she reassured herself. He would come home tonight just like he always did, and it would be okay. JC tore her clothing off and found a t-shirt. It was Max's. She brought it to her nose, inhaling his scent. JC threw it on for lack of anything else to wear and wearily pulled back the covers of her bed. Burrowing under them, she slept with the scent of Max in her nose, blocking out everything else. JC woke with a hard knot in her belly to the dark cool of her bedroom. As her eyes focused on the room around her, the horror of what happened refreshed itself and sank in. Sitting up, she looked to the mat on the floor and then the open window. Fluffy was still gone. And somehow she knew he wasn't ever coming back. Tears filled her eyes and anxiety tore at her throat. She would never see Fluffy again. Pieces of Max's words came back to her from their car ride back. He was sorry he had to tell her this way. Yes, he knew most people didn't believe in werewolves, but Dakota Cassidy, Wolfmates, an American werewolf in Hoboken, /77, they really did exist. She was his life mate. He knew this because a prophecy told him so in some kind of soup. It was how he was so sure he was falling in love with her, because Eva said so. First he didn't believe it. He liked his life just fine without a life mate, until she'd found him in the pound. Now, after only 2 days, he knew he didn't want to live without her. He hated Kibble. JC choked back a laugh. Kibble. Yes, if she would consider the possibility of mating with him, she'd have to come and live with him in the sticks of New Jersey. He'd do everything in his power to see to her happiness. No, she didn't have to become a wolf, and no, he wouldn't rip her throat open if she refused. No, she didn't have to howl at the moon. Maybe she could open a beauty salon there. He was the alpha male of the pack. It had to be her decision. He would never force her to do something she didn't want to do. JC buried her face in her pillow. It was too much information. Werewolves and prophecies and life mates. Oh my. The next week was a blur for JC. She went to work and tried to focus on anything but what she'd seen, heard. But each night she came home and was greeted with the empty silence of her apartment. Fluffy wasn't coming back, and neither was Max. When she came home midweek, his apartment was empty, and the next day it was filled with someone new. Another man who waved and smiled cheerfully at her, saying maybe they could get together sometime. No, she couldn't do that. No more sex with neighbors. For all she knew, he was probably a vampire. How could she know who anyone really was anymore? JC toyed with the soup in her bowl as the clock ticked in her kitchen. She hadn't heard a word from Max, and now it was beginning to bug her. Actually, the numb calm she'd experienced was dissipating and replacing itself with a good pissed off. Where the fuck was he? How dare he dump this shit in her lap? And then just leave her with her own fucking thoughts? Dakota Cassidy, Wolfmates, an American werewolf in Hoboken, /78. Oh my god, what was she thinking? He was a werewolf. A fucking howl at the moon. Rare meat eating, allergic to silver, bona fide fucking werewolf. Rolling her head on her neck, JC paused. And so what? Okay, so he was just a smidge scary. Oh hell, he was a lot scary, but when had anyone in her 30 years made her feel like Max did? If he were a man, a fully human man, by now she'd have been picking out friggin' china and asking people to check off chicken or beef for the wedding reception. She missed him desperately, and he'd been a part of her life for a mere 2 days. But she'd have to move to the sticks of Jersey, leave her salon and her apartment, leave her quiet, lonely existence. What was the worst that could happen? They would fail at a relationship. He would bring a dead rabbit home to her instead of flowers? How would she tell her parents? JC jumped up and paced the floor, making plans in her head that didn't fully form because she couldn't keep a straight thought. The only thing she did know was that she and Max needed to talk now that she'd had time to let the reality of this sink in. If missing him the way she did was love, if craving his touch was love, this was really love, then she couldn't let the opportunity slide because he was a wolf. A fucking werewolf. JC banged on Max's cabin door with a vengeance. God only knew how she'd found her way back to it. She could thank her good sense of direction and her need to talk to Max. When he opened the door, she closed her eyes, hoping he was in human form. JC, look at me, he said quietly. JC popped her eyes open and sighed. God, he was so fabulous. Even when he was fluffy, she thought he was magnificent. Taking a deep breath, she pushed her way through the door and stood in the middle of his living room. Okay, we have to talk, and why the hell haven't you called me? Don't they have phones here in Hooterville? Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /79. He fought a smile. Yes, they have phones, but you needed time to think. Wanted you to have it. Well, I'm done thinking now. If I think much more, I'll likely end up in a padded cell. Max chuckled, but his hands remained clenched in fists by his side. So, I thought, and then I thought some more, and once the shock wore off, I thought again. This is how I see it. You are a wolf, a fucking wolf. You let me adopt you at the pound, fall in love with you as a dog, and then you move in next door and make me think I'm a slut because I jumped your bones within hours of meeting you. What do you have to say for yourself, Max Adams? Max shrugged his big shoulders and gave her a sheepish grin. I told you I didn't think you were a slut. That's just how it is with life mates. Max? This life mate thing. How long have you known I was your life mate? Max grinned again, the dimples in his face deepened. About a year. A year, she said, astounded. And what about this situation, she pointed at. The both of them could have changed if you'd done this prophecy thing a year ago. Max frowned. I could have given you time to adjust? Would you even? Good answer, Fluffy. So does this mean you're considering this thing between us? Maybe. I'm going to have to do stuff, aren't I? Like buy you flowers and shit. He teased. JC burst out laughing. We'll just have to see. I only know that I've missed you and your alter ego, Fluffy, and I'm not as attached to Hoboken as I thought I was. The salon. I talked to my partner. It's going to take some reworking, but if I do this life mate thing, she said, we'll figure it out. So you'll stay. JC couldn't wait anymore. She closed the distance between them and threw her Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. Backsliding. Arms around his neck, kissing him soundly. I suppose that could happen. Max breathed deeply. I've missed you too, and we'll have to see what I can do to convince you staying is the right thing to do. He wiggled his eyebrows at her before he slipped his tongue between her lips. JC moaned at the rush of excitement only Max could create. Her body began to settle against his, and it was suddenly all right. Max pulled away from her and cupped her jaw. Oh, and by the way, that cutesy Sweetums bullshit sucked. Sweetums? He snorted at her. Nobody calls me Sweetums. Yeah? Well, you sure didn't seem to mind me calling you Sweetums while I was scrubbing your balls now, did ya? He narrowed his eyes to keep from chuckling. Well, that was a mighty fine scrubbing you gave my balls. Didn't you know all dogs like to have their balls scrubbed? Oh, shut up. What really pisses me off here is you let me believe you were some mangy mutt. All the humiliation you suffered along the way, as far as I'm concerned, you deserved it. I mean, I talked to you about you. How utterly absurd is that? You didn't play fair, Max, and now I'm considering moving to the woods and living with you and your pack of wolves. Max nodded his head. I know it's a lot to take in, baby, but I am what I am. You don't have to be a wolf too, you know, though I bet you'd have a beautiful coat. JC shook her finger at him. Don't you try to appeal to the hairdresser in me. Buddy, how the hell do I explain this to my mother? Hey Mom, I have a new boyfriend. His name is Max and he lives in the country. Have I mentioned he's a wolf? Yeah, just like the kind you see on National Geographic. Nope, we don't need Halloween costumes here in the sticks, we have Max. Max laughed as he scooped her up and carried her off to the bedroom. We have a lot to talk about, but could it wait? It's been a week since I've seen you. And well, you know. JC giggled. Yeah, I think I do know. Take me to your den and ravish me. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /81. Just as they hit the bed, Derek, the brother she'd heard about but didn't meet, burst through the door to the cabin yelling Max's name. You know, he commented to JC as he kissed her, I'm not sure how I feel about this alpha thing if it means I have to take care of everything. Derek popped his head in the door with his eyes closed. Can I look? JC laughed and Max said, Yes, Derek, you can look. I've got a big fucking problem, brother. Goddamn Eva and her prophecies. Max jumped up from the bed, concern written all over his face. What now? Derek leaned back out of the door and picked something up. He showed it to JC and Max. This now. He held up a pet carrier. Max's eyes widened. What the fuck? Derek yelped. Yeah, you got it. Eva sends me off to the pound today with some mysterious bullshit about finding the blue container. Well, JC thought it was blue. And Max said hesitantly as he eyed the pet carrier. Derek narrowed his eyes and held up the carrier with 2 hands in front of Max, and this is my fucking life mate. Max and JC both peered inside the dark interior of the carrier. Something stirred, dark and shadowy. Meow. Wolfmates. What's new, pussycat? Derek Adams is not happy. His pack of wolves isn't like all the others. He's got a brother who found his life mate in the pound, a cousin who's a vegetarian. And now he has a life mate of his own and she isn't barking.